So, hey, good morning. This is the Irish Mafia now. I don't know if I should say anything about the Mafia, but if you thought the Italians are bad, now you got the Irish. Well done, Cindy. That was just fantastic. I don't know how it's a lot of pressure now because I can't be that funny. Firstly, thank you all so much for being here and for coming to listen to us and to be with us this morning. I can tell you in my part of the world, I work in Ireland and the UK, I would never ever be at anything with this amount of women or gay people. So, LGBT, it is an absolutely different stance. So thank you so much. This is an amazing experience. A big thank you to Out and Equal. I really only got to find out a lot about you over the last couple of months, working together for this, and then obviously meeting everybody, Celise and everybody, and the board, and you've been so welcoming, and thank you so much. And thank you, Altria, for sponsoring this morning. That was indeed a lovely start to the morning. So just, I suppose, to start off, I want to tell you a story. I believe storytelling is a really big part of this experience at Disney, and sort of staying with the tradition, I want to tell you a story and tell you a bit of my story. It'll have sort of different curves. It's a bit like a ride. It's going to go up and down a little bit, but we'll get there in the end. And it's a big part of who I am. And I start off with being a kid. I'm from a place called County Limerick in Ireland. So if you've ever been to Ireland, it's as south as you can go. Thank you. And it's quite a beautiful part of the world. But if you were there in the 1980s and you lived in the land where there was 2 channels on the TV, and it was a very Catholic, monocultural, same, very close society, you might see it a little bit differently. I grew up and went to what we call secondary school in the 1980s, and I found it a very oppressive type of society. And one of my sort of earliest memories as a kid is being a small kid and being over with my grandmother. I had a widowed grandmother, and this was another Irish affliction. You always had to stay, the eldest kid always had to go and stay with the widowed grandmother on the weekends, and I happened to be the one, and she had no TV. It was very hard. But I remember being there, and my mum coming over, and my grandmother and my mum having this conversation, kind of secret whispered conversation. And what I overheard, because of course I was bold and I listened, was that a guy they knew, a local guy, had killed himself. And the reason that he'd killed himself was because of his sexuality. Now, they didn't use words quite as sophisticated as that. And that started something in me that made me, I guess, really fearful. This deep fear started in me. And it was compounded by the society and the environment. I grew up in an environment where I remember watching on the news, a lady who had had a baby outside of marriage through an affair with someone being questioned. There was a court case. There was just things happening. I remember somebody who was my age giving birth at a crossroads, and she dying and it being a scan. So when you grow up in that kind of environment, you feel nothing but fear. And for me, that was very real. My parents were good people and loving, but very conservative. And their expectations for me were to have a safe life, maybe marry the farmer down the road because I was from a farming family. And if I was really lucky, maybe I'd be a secretary. And nothing wrong with being a secretary, but that was where they saw it going to. I couldn't wait to get out of Ireland. I mean, I honestly thought I wouldn't get out fast enough. I grew up really watching American TV, so everything you've all probably grown up with was a big part of our lives. I thought the Brady Bunch were the most exciting family. I wanted to be a Brady so much. It was those lovely white teeth and wonderful clothes, and we were like in heaven when we watched it. And I kind of wondered what it was about that sort of environment. And I wanted to come to the States, but it was a bit far away in the beginning. I knew I was different. I knew I didn't fit in. And I think I knew from an early age I was gay. I was reading, lots of things I probably shouldn't have been reading and I somehow found way through things. I used to go to the local library and pretend to be a really good student, but I was looking at other things. But it was hard to find anything. And I had found out about all these books that kind of had lesbian stories. And I wondered why I liked tennis so much. I mean, And I remember having all these debates with people why I thought Martina Navratilova was a much better tennis player, but it was obviously other reasons, and Billie Jean King as well. And something that was really impressionable for me was Martina winning Wimbledon and running up through the crowds to her lover in the audience. And my God, that was one of the most positive things I'd ever seen. So, fair play to tennis for giving me some awareness. I guess it gives homosexuality in Ireland, just to give you a bit of background, was not decriminalised until '93. So we're not talking about anything that's that long ago. And actually, to be a lesbian in Ireland was not illegal because Queen Victoria, from whom we inherited these wonderful British laws, never thought anyone could be a lesbian, that it didn't exist. So therefore, actually, being a lesbian wasn't actually illegal, but for a gay man it was. And again, would have seen some fairly horrific stuff around that. I left Ireland in '88, and I never intended to come back to Ireland. I remember the day I was leaving in Shannon Airport, and my parents were crying and weeping and moaning in the Valley of Tears, and I was thinking, will they ever get out of here? I want to go, I want to be gone. I had like £1,000, and I'd been given some money, and I just wanted to spend and get out of town. But funnily enough, I went to the UK to work, and in Europe after that, and I somehow wanted to come back, and in '91 I did. And I qualified as a chef originally. I decided, again, it just goes back to that time. I didn't know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go in life. And I went to catering college because I thought I kind of fancied working in food. And I laterally, when I came back to Ireland, I got involved. I went back to college and did hotel management, and therefore the start of my career around that whole area, I guess, in the service industry. When I came back to Ireland in '91, Ireland was still pretty similar to the Ireland I'd left. I remember being in Dublin and coming to live in Dublin, and it was pretty dark and dismal at that time as well. But the gleams of something began to happen, and for me, the emergence of my lesbian life began, I guess. I put an ad in something called GCM, which was Gay Community News, because I didn't know where to find anybody else. And I heard about some places you could go if you knock 4 times, you might meet others. And I went to some of those places, and I did meet others. And I met my first long-term partner, despite myself, because I don't know quite how that happened. I didn't set out to, but despite myself, in '91 as well. So it was a momentous time. And I started work in Sodexo at that time. And that was, again, what was to be a catalyst for a lot of change. I came out in that close circle, and the close circle being really my friends and my life in Dublin. And I lived that life for honour around 18 years. I had an out life in Dublin with my friends. I was out in the lesbian, the gay community. I was an activist, but I wasn't out in work, and I wasn't out at home in County Limerick with my parents. And that was so incredibly difficult and disabling. And when I think now, I think the wasted energy that was around that. I put up with, I suppose, some difficult things. I had people who, would kind of say, well, somebody once sort of almost blackmailed me, and I had sort of, I had a lot of fear around this. And I also, at the time, I was very nervous about sort of coming out and work. And I now look at all the really brilliant things we do in work around trying to encourage people. And the part that was probably quite different was I didn't have role models at the time. Reinvigorating my activism was a really big part of that change for me. I got involved in an organisation called LOT, and again, it was one of those knock 3 times and you'll get in kind of organisations. It was called Lesbians Organised Together. I'll tell you just a very funny story on this one. Many years later, when we'd moved on to other things, and at the time when we started LOT, we'd all got T-shirts with big LOT and the women symbol on them. And anyway, I must have chucked out clothes, put a bag out for charity, and somehow this bag had ended up down in Limerick with my mum. And I was going with some friends. And we were going down to Limerick, and anyhow, my mum comes out. But my mum arrived out to meet us, and she had this T-shirt on. She was doing some work around at home, and she had this T-shirt on. And my friends were saying to me, and I'm like going, oh, what do I do here? And what made it even worse, there's a group in Ireland who have a women's camp every year. And again, it's another one of those very closed things, happens in a space nobody knows. You have to go through 3 fields to get in. And women's camp was in my local area. And I'm thinking, my God, some of the women from women's camp are going to go to the local shop. They're going to see my mother with this T-shirt. Oh, you have no idea of the pain. But anyhow, I think when she'd gone to bed that night, I snuck in and I stole the T-shirt back, and I had to destroy it. And my sister and I always have a joke about that from time. I guess I found my ways of being visible really around advocacy and conversations, getting involved in those organizations. And I got involved in an organization called Outhouse, which was supporting LGBT people coming out. But we were still very underground and somewhat disadvantaged in Ireland. So what changed, I guess, was, to me, a convergence, a coming together of many different things. First of all, a change in the economic environment in Ireland. That really, really changed. We went from being a people who were on the bottom of the socio-economic calendar to a group who that changed. A lot thanks to foreign direct investment from the US, so thank you very much. We say in Ireland we're closer to Boston than Berlin, and that's most definitely true. I think we were a people, we left, our diaspora went all over the world, and so many came back, and they brought difference, and they brought change and openness. Family changed, the structure and the nature of family as it was defined changed. So people began to say, they were separated, or a mum who had kids and who wasn't married, and people began to come out somewhat, and we had some changes. Education most definitely changed things, culture, and particularly gay rights. And we had a number of groups who worked to better gay rights, and that made such a big difference. NGOs and the people themselves. So we pushed really hard. We got decriminalization, and more than a decade later, civil partnership, and that really made a difference for us as well. And for me personally, in that 15 years, I changed enormously. Sodexo, I suppose, somewhere around that early 2000, began to really very visibly in my environment get involved in diversity and inclusion. I was asked as the Mountie Irish person to get involved in our Diversity and Inclusion Council. I say that, I was asked very nicely, but I think probably I was the Mountie Irish one. And that journey to that, in that council really, really helped. And the trigger really around my coming out and work was marred with some sadness at the time. My partner and I had been together 18 years, and my partner had had an affair, and it was devastating. And I remember not being able to tell anybody, so I wasn't telling anyone in Limerick, I wasn't telling anyone in work, and I was shattered, and yet I was trying to go to work and keep going. And I had a few friends in our D&I council, some fantastic mentors and friends, and I told one or two people, and they said, oh, we knew. Well, that was the first thing, and they were just brilliant, and they put their arms around me and said to me, "It's all going to be okay, and this is great, and as in this is great that you're able to tell us." And that started almost a triggering of once I started telling people, I couldn't stop really, and I went back into my own workplace, into my own team. I told them what had happened, and I received enormous support. And of course, as one does over a period of 2 or 3 years, things began to change. And then I was starting dating again and all of that sort of thing, and getting back into the workplace with a bit of a difference. One of the things I changed in my workplace, which I think really helped as well, was, and you were talking about partners earlier on, Cindy, was when I became the managing director of the business in Ireland in 2012, one of the first things I did, and I was the first Irish person and the first woman, I said, okay, let's change this whole thing about what we do on nights out and at Christmas. And there used to be this kind of traditional management night out, and I said, okay, let's have a partners night out. But I was very clear, it was everyone to bring their life partners, because I wanted to do that. I'd met somebody new in my life, Sarah, she's sitting down there, and I wanted to bring Sarah, and I wanted to be very open with my team about our lives. And I wanted them to bring the people who support them when they're at work, and who put up with all the long hours we work and the hard things. And we did that. And it's quite interesting to this day, and in the last couple of years, all of the partners of my team said this was one of the things that really changed everything, because we suddenly saw each other as people. We realized we had a work life, a home life, and all of these things were so integrated. And also, I think that helped in that Sodexo journey and in that rhetoric when I went back to the D&I Council and talked about how we did things. I was also very lucky that we started a pride group, a global pride group. I was involved in building the business case for that, and now that's sort of spread out around 13 regions. And when I go on global pride calls, we've got people from all over the world, and it's amazing. And last year we launched our pride group for the UK and Ireland, and I'm the lead on that. And again, I suppose again to say just the enormous support we got from our organisation, our CEO, Michelle Landell, who I know is very committed to diversity and inclusion, actually put himself behind that and came and launched our group. And that was just enormously powerful to be in that room on the day. There were a couple of hundred people there, and it was just fantastic. I've also had some amazing colleagues. Rohini, who heads up our diversity and inclusion globally, Raldi, one of my colleagues who's here today, and Anthony. They've been fantastic support over those years as well. And so, when I try to sort of, even if I ever have a slow moment and I back down, they keep pushing and bringing us onwards. I've traveled loads, and I've talked lots about what we've done. And I mean, there's so much I could talk all day, but I'm not going to. You'll be glad to know. But being out in work has been one of the most amazing things. It's changed everything, because now, because I work long hours, I travel a lot, and I'm working particularly a lot around Europe, I'm having to be open about my life, to be able to share my life, to be able to integrate my work and my home life, and that's really helped a lot. And so for the first time, over the last 9-10 years, I've begun to feel safe again. So if you take from that kid who didn't feel safe, I feel that sense of safety. And that safety came from work, and that visibility. So now I work very hard to be a role model, and I'm trying to get a lot more of our LGBT people to be out there in work. And we've got a couple of hundred members now in our even UK and Ireland part. And I suppose just another thing to probably speak about is that in Ireland, as you may know, we had a referendum in 2015 for marriage equality, and thank you. And I'm very proud to say that Sodexo was really behind that, but I was also a part of that. I was on the board of an organisation called Glen, and I've been there since 2013. We worked really, really hard to make this happen. And a little bit like your own president, think about the audacity to hope. We really wondered, could we ever hope that this might happen? It was a really far off dream. We went out. We canvassed, Sarah and I, we went out many, many evenings to our neighbours. And it's really quite hard when you have to go out to all your neighbours and your fellow citizens and knock on the door and say, excuse me, will you vote for me to give me the right to marry? I was telling some of the others, it was quite interesting the amount of people who wanted to have a conversation about sex. We were amazed how many people wanted to talk about that. In fairness, 90% of the people were fantastic. We also experienced some pretty bad reactions, having people spit in our face, call us all sorts of things, but hey, that happens. But in truth, the day we went to the count on the 23rd of May 2015, so we had the referendum on the 22nd and we all went to vote, and that was just so exciting to wake up that day. I went out the night before with my big Yes Equality badges and sort of bandanas, and we stood as people came off the trains and got to get them all in, and we had so many things we did to try and get them there. And on the day, to see people going to vote, to sort of, because there was a centre near our house, and we got up early and we were there early, but I went into work and I saw people going, and it's just so exciting. And then we went to bed on the night of the 22nd, and on the morning of the 23rd, Sarah's mom and our family, we all came out to vote, to check the count. And we went there's an area in Dublin, you can go to the counting house. And so all the votes are in pieces of paper like this, and you're standing there and they're stacked up like this high. And the people are doing them and they're going, yes, yes, yes. Oh my God, it was just amazing. And to stand in your own country and to have that feeling, and to stand in Dublin Castle, which is probably, I suppose, the centre of where our government is, and they put up the big map of the country, and you saw every county come in, and except one, they all came in with a majority for yes, and 63% of the population said yes. So that's really something quite special. And that changed everything, I think, for us in Ireland. It changed how we feel about ourselves, the pride when we walk down the street, the kind of things you talked about, when you walk down the street with your partner, what it feels like. Also, for Sarah and I, in 2014, we had a civil partnership. Again, something a long time ago in my life I never thought I would ever have the right to do. I remember going to my sister and brother's wedding and, you know, wondering if I was ever going to be in that space. And that was fantastic. And we celebrated with 100 others. It was quite a challenge for me I had to come out to my mum beforehand. And I really, really struggled with this. It was the hardest because, you know, there I was 40 something years of age and I still hadn't told my mother. And Sarah said to me, if you don't tell her, I will. Now, in our case, my mum is quite ill. My mum has Parkinson's disease, and she's suffering with ill health, and so she couldn't actually be physically there on the day. But obviously, it was very important she would know. And unfortunately, my dad died before I could have that conversation. But it was quite funny on the night. I was down in Limerick with her, and we were watching some TV and had the tea, had a coffee. I had about 5 glasses of wine, and I kept saying, "I have something to tell you. I have something to tell you." And eventually there was this program she wanted to watch was just right. And she said to me, look, whatever you have to say, can you move on? I want to watch this. So I kind of said, Mom, you know, and she said, yeah, I know. And it was just fantastic. And I'm so glad because now she's got dementia and, you know, at least she knows who we are and what it's all about. And just 1 or 2 more things on that. I have an aunt and uncle, and he's 97, and my aunt is 80, Dolores and Michael, and they live in rural Ireland. And I think they're just the epitome of how things have changed. You know, again, I struggled with telling Dolores. And anyway, when I told them, and she said to me, oh, don't worry, she said, Michael knows all about it, he's read all about it, it's all fine. So I said, oh, great. And I'm like, whoa. He reads the paper a lot, and when marriage equality came in, and we'd had our civil partnership and everything, they were just fantastic. And Dolores came out when I arrived. She came out to meet me in the drive, and she put her arms around me and said congratulations, and two of us. And then we went indoors, and Michael, her husband, said to me, he said, I've only one question for you. And he has a Limerick accent, and if you were in Ireland, you know, and he said to me, he said, LGBT. He said, which one of those are you? So I've enlightened him since. And I guess those are sort of where it's at and where it's been. But, you know, work has been amazing, and Sodexo was 100% behind everything we did. And that's, I think, a thing that I would say to all of you, key messages to take away. Don't be afraid to push your companies, your organizations, to get them to push their boundaries, because it'll really change not only yourselves, but your own lives and the people who come after you. And I think we all have a part to do in that, and to think about the future and as we go to the next stages of our lives. And that's certainly what I'm going to do. So thank you all very much, and lovely to spend some time and share with you this morning. Thank you.
Hi, ladies. I'm curious as to your experiences. I think it's, you know, once you've come out at work, you know, you get some support. How have both of you obviously deal with customers? How have your experiences been with people asking about your personal life when you're with a customer?
I'll quickly answer my part. I guess it surprises me that it keeps happening, because I think, you know, I don't know, but I think I look gay, and I think everybody knows. And when you're in a small pond, everybody in Ireland seems to, you know, I'm probably the most out lesbian, so I'm thinking, how can anyone not know? And then people say to me, oh, you're married? And I say, yeah. And then they say, what does your husband do? And I'm going, gee. Anyhow, so I just straight away say I'm gay, I'm a lesbian. I come out and say, and generally, actually 100% people have been great. And surprisingly, they've ended up being people that I've had much deeper conversations with, because it's more authentic. And so I guess I think it's a leveler, and it's much better to be that way.
Not only do I think everybody thinks I'm gay, I think everybody's Italian. So it's kind of, you're Italian. I'm just letting you know. You know, it's very interesting. When asked, I definitely do come out. Because I just feel at this age, I just can't not. And I agree completely with Margot, although I have a feeling I agree with Margot on everything, is that you really do deepen the relationship. So even the story I told about that woman from a bank in, you know, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I'm a Christian. Well, I'm a lesbian. I'm not kidding. We have built a bond together because it was just that simple. It just came out that easily. And I think that's how you build the relationship. So definitely when asked, I come out, and sometimes I come out when not asked because I just want to kind of sort of talk about my fabulous children and my delicious wife.
Thanks very much for your comments this morning. I'm really interested that you talked about the roles of being a mentor and the mentors in your work. Tell us about now, as you're more senior leaders in your business, if you're being asked to be a mentor and about those experiences. Particularly if younger LGBT, either employees or colleagues, and what you do as a mentor to those individuals.
I'm often asked to be a mentor to folks, and anytime I'm asked, I say yes. That's first and foremost. And mostly, I just, it depends on the age of the person. I mean, people who are in their 20s just are thinking differently. And so they mentor me, actually. So they look for mentorship from me, but they're actually mentoring me. And I learn so much and think differently about the world. And for others, I just really talk about the freedom. When you talk about what was that difficult first step, in coming out, and how you did it, and then once it was done, the kind of the freedom and how your world changed. And I give as many examples of that as possible. We have a woman, the woman I talked about at work who had been there almost 30 years, who came out. She's now on the board. She literally came out less than a year ago. She's now on the board of the AGLCC, so that's the Atlanta Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. I mean, she's out, baby. And it's just that freedom to be who you are and allow that creativity. When you give examples of that, the courage starts to build and the confidence starts to build.
I guess very similar for me. When I'm asked to mentor somebody, I say yes, if at all possible. I'm mentoring 7 women entrepreneurs, and I'm mentoring a couple of young people as well around LGBT. And one of those young men that I'm mentoring, Thomas, his name is 24. He's from Kerry in Ireland, again, very rural, and he's already in his 2nd career, and he's just amazing. And what I'm seeing, I guess, with the young people that I'm mentoring and that I'm supporting is, there'll be no stopping them. They're going to be fantastic, and I think that's wonderful. I want them not to have the wasted years and the wasted opportunities. But I guess I think it's incredibly important to mentor, to support, and I see it as my duty to kind of pay it forward that way.
There's a question there.
Thank you both for a little mini episode of Cameron and Rhea earlier. That was awesome. Shout out to all the girls who love girls as well, who got that joke. I was wondering if you could share some advice on, in my company, we have we call it an opportunity, on getting women and men in the same room together within our LGBT resource group. I don't know if anybody else has that similar experience, but we struggle to get the ladies to show up if they think a single man is going to be in the room.
I guess I've not found that in my own company and work. So organizationally, I've not found it, but I've found it particularly in volunteer organizations, NGOs. There tends to be the men's ones and the women's ones, and we don't mix. So one of the things I've done in that respect is I've gone out and personally had the conversation with people. I've had to tap the people I know, and sorry, my language might be a different interpretation here, but sort of tap somebody on the shoulder and say, listen, really could do with you getting involved. Can you come and support? And that's been the instigator for change. So in our Glen board, I was the only woman at one stage. Now we're 4, and they literally have all come from personal conversations. And the more that are coming, then obviously they've got a duty to do the same. And that's been my experience.
I agree. I've not had that experience. I was thinking of a lesbian mixer to kind of get things started, but I've not had that experience. But I do think Margot really hit the nail on the head. When people don't show up, sometimes not sometimes, you really need to get to the root of why they're not showing up. And you have to ask them in a very open and engaging way so they tell you. We're having these LGBT events or meetings. We really need the voices of the lesbians in the group, or we really need the voices of the allies, or the transgendered, or the bisexuals, or whomever, or allies, right? Our two leads are allies. And we need your voice, and we need your experience, but we're not seeing folks show up. Can you give me some insight as to what we could do differently to attract that? And then as they speak, towards the end, you just say, we need your leadership. Would you come to the next meeting with me and help? And so I think it'll chip away little by little, but I think it's a great question and an important question about how do you bring people into the fold. And thank you for doing that work.
We have one more quick question, and then we want to get you back. So,
hi everyone. My name is Ellie Okelberg. I'm a welding engineer at Chevron, and I live and work in Mississippi. So my question is, how would you adapt to having such a supportive company, but without that local support, without a local LGBT, without a local support system in the community?
So you're saying the company is supportive, but there isn't a local support?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's another great question. Chapters are so important. When we put our, and I think many firms do this, when they put their LGBT groups together, or their women's councils or others, they look for chapters. And what we try to do is build a single chapter, make that single chapter successful, and then kind of remodel that. People like to be around things that are exciting and successful, but also people like to do a lot of social justice work in their community, because I don't know what the challenges are and the needs are as well as anybody who's in the community. So one of the things is usually HR is really terrific in helping build a chapter or helping you create that chapter there. And it always starts off small, and it could be a picnic or it could be something simple. Never has to cost a lot of money. The creative stuff people do on $50 is amazing. And just start to bring people together and just start to have the conversation, and it does take off. So that's how I would think about it.
Yeah, and I guess different environment for me, but when I look at when we're trying to do things in UK or Ireland or Central Europe around trying to, and particularly when we're more isolated spaces, we work very much with our NGOs, even if they're not LGBT NGOs, but NGOs who are sympathetic to things we're trying to do, and try to understand what strands and web of influence they've got in the local community. And out of that sometimes comes those, interesting connections, and those connections can help at least form a barrier of support and be there. So I think kind of maybe deepen the search maybe a little bit might be worth looking at. And I go back to, again, the Irish part, because it was a very, isolated thing. It's amazing when you have conversations. One of the things we had to do around the time of the referendum was we were urging people to have conversations with their neighbours, their friends and their families. And it's amazing those conversations that got wider and wider and wider, just how you found that people you didn't think were kindred spirits actually were. And even if they didn't agree 100%, you'd usually get 60 or 70%, and that's still warming versus the negative of that. So I think there's a kind of couple of different strands to look to, and we'll all help and support in any way we can. And I mean, certainly organisations like Out and Equal will certainly, I think, be able to give you some of those supports.
well, listen, I want to ask you to one more time thank these two powerful women for these stories.